Hello, hello, hello. Right before we hit the record on this, Tevi, you asked me how was my trip, and I wanted to just get this piece of the conversation out there because I thought that it would be a good topic of discussion for today, just around, the awareness, the level of awareness that grew for me on
Mhm.
this trip. And it relates back to the work that you're doing with people.
Very cool.
Um, Yeah, yeah. So I just returned from a 10-day road trip, a cross-country road trip with my husband. Okay, where
Wonderful.
we went from Florida up to Michigan, which is where I went to grad school. I feel like that's a second home for
Oh,
me, Michigan.
yes.
Then we drove back. I thought it would be really nice to start by just talking about my big old aha moment that I got from this trip, because
hmm
I think it's really important. It's an important topic to shine a light on for our
hmm
listeners. Okay. So I started my business in 2017
hmm
while I was in a full-time job. 3 years later, I stepped out of my full-time job to run my business full-time. So
Yes.
it's been almost 4 years that I've been out of my corporate job. Now, I've been on many trips in that
hmm
time, in these last 4 years that I've been flying solo. I've been on many trips. However, I didn't realize until this trip that this is the first time that I completely disconnected from work.
Oh,
I have I haven't given myself the permission, the opportunity to take a real vacation, like an actual vacation where there's no work involved,
hmm
for 4 years.
Wow.
Uh, and when I made that realization, it blew my mind. It blew my mind because here I am, the queen of work-life balance, the queen of care of yourself, being mindful of filling your cup because we're constantly pouring from that cup. So we have to give ourselves the time to do that. But I didn't quite realize that I hadn't completely disconnected for 4 years. And I couldn't believe that.
Wow.
I just couldn't believe it.
So how did it feel?
To say that it felt amazing is like just like not only an understatement, but doesn't capture what it felt like. It was like I further stepped into the real me
Wonderful.
because I didn't have you know any responsibilities that were looming over me. I
hmm
had zero schedule, like pre-planned schedule. I felt like a kid again. I could do whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. It
That's
was joyful.
fantastic. That is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yes, and I know we both talk about this all the
hmm
time to each other, to our clients. Um, but it like really hit home this time that you have to really hit the pause button sometimes.
Yes. And the timing of it all.
Yeah, because I've been working through this big transition in my business,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And there were some things that I was trying to figure out. And I was like, okay, well, this makes sense. Let me start going down this route. But then sometimes I'd start going that route and it's like, okay, well, that doesn't quite feel right. Let me reevaluate that. All right, this makes sense. Let me go down this route. That doesn't quite feel right. So it was like I was trying these, like testing out these different options that didn't quite feel right. And thanks to this trip, I realized, well, because I'm kind of testing different variations of the same thing that I've
hmm
been doing before, that I
Yes.
I felt called to transition out of that into something new. But I didn't, like, that light bulb didn't come on for me
Yes.
until I just completely let go of everything for a minute.
That is wonderful to hear.
So
Well,
I thought that, yeah,
your
go ahead.
energy is different.
Oh my God.
You're like glowing and all inspired and
Yeah, I feel different. I feel different. I feel like, okay, yeah, like that, whatever that box was that was locked
Yeah.
now is unlocked, you know? So I wanted to just kind of like open up this episode by talking about that, because I feel like this is something that a lot of our high performer
Mm-hmm.
listeners could relate to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we don't notice sometimes how tight we're wound.
Yes.
You know, we don't notice that because it's like it's this incremental process that where every step or maybe every day that coil gets wound up a little bit tighter.
Tighter,
And it's
yes.
so incremental that maybe we don't notice it, because it's like we feel like, I say we because I'm one of those high performers too. I know we've talked about this before, but it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and we're doers. And it just, when I realized that, it reminded me of the question that you asked me a while ago, where you said, are you doing or are you being?
Yes.
You know, that question took on a whole new light for me in these last couple of weeks, Tevi.
That is wonderful. Yes, there's a lot to it because, like we were saying last time, we go out, right? And we try to carve a new path for ourselves. Okay. First of all, you have no idea how wide that path needs to be, how much effort it's going to take to carve that path, how far do you have to, dig up to reach whatever destination that you're trying to reach. A lot of times we don't even know what the destination is, right? So now we face ourselves with the question of sustainability. How long can you sustain that level of focus and push and resiliency and never give up and never let up? It's just after a while you forget how long it's been. You forget how far you had to go, and you forget the amount of sacrifices that you had to make to be the person that you're trying to be, right? And this is, I believe, it doesn't get talked about enough because we live in a society where they're selling you the results constantly, right? You're going to do this and you're going to 10x your business. And how do you become a millionaire in 6 months? And how do you do this, all that stuff? But you don't talk about the human aspect of it, what it takes for a person to become what they want to become. What's the price to pay? How do you make it sustainable? And based on our last conversation, I believe people need to make a distinction between what they want out of life versus their goals. Because when you're trying to, like, we set goals, right? And this year I want to do this, and next year I want to do this. But does that mean that this is the person that you want to be ultimately? Does that mean that this is ultimately what's going to make you happy, or what's going to make your life feel the way that you're hoping it will feel? Because we can come up with goals, like every single week you can set goals for yourself, right? So we get busy basically pulling ourselves into the business of setting goals and achieving goals. But what are we becoming in the process? That does not get talked about enough. And just like you said, taking that time for yourself and completely disconnecting, somehow you felt yourself for the first
You know
time
what it
in
did?
a long time.
It reminded me of what I want for my life. Like
Mm-hmm.
the whole reason why I wanted to have my own business in the first place, besides helping people in the way that I want to help them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And be agile and flexible to be able to shift with changing interests or changing needs that people
Mm-hmm.
have, right?
Mm-hmm.
But besides have having that autonomy. The other reason why I did it is because there's a life that I want to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while, because I practice mindfulness, I stop and I take a look at my life currently, and I'm like, you know what? There are a lot of, that vision of my life that I want to live. A lot of that is already happening right now. You know,
Yes. Yes.
not all of it, but a lot of it is,
Yeah.
and so being on this trip and just letting go just further reminded me of what I actually want for my life. Like, it put me back in touch intimately with my vision that I'm trying to create for my life. It's like, okay, these things are what I want, and I need to tweak some of the things that I'm doing every day, some of the ways that I'm thinking about things, some of the ways that I'm moving forward with things, because those things are not in alignment with this thing that I want, this vision that I have for my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it just also made me realize how to work smarter and not harder. Whereas if I hadn't have stepped out, if I hadn't have hit that pause button and just totally disconnected, who knows how much longer I would have stayed in this grind, how longer that coil would have continued to get tighter
Yes.
and tighter wound, you know?
Yes. And somehow it's never enough. No matter how much
Yeah.
effort you put into it, it doesn't seem to be enough, right?
Yeah.
So like everything you just said is like so many directions we can go with this, because it's like what you just said, like you took stock of who you've become and what you've accomplished, and you realize a lot of the things that you're pursuing, you've already accomplished quite a bit of it, right? We never take the time to do the inventory. We
No,
just
not really.
get into this mechanism that I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. So whatever it is that there is, we forget what that actually means after a while.
I usually have to be reminded. So I have a friend that's very good about reminding me. Um, it isn't until I'm reminded, usually, that I will take that stuff, that I'll say, okay, let me look back to where I was a year ago, and how far
Mm-hmm.
I've come in this last year or 2 or 4 years since I
Mm-hmm.
first started, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you're right, we can get caught up in this. I'm not there yet. I need to do more. Here's the next thing. I'm gonna, strive to accomplish that thing because this isn't enough yet.
Mm-hmm.
But when we
Yeah.
take a look backwards, it's like, holy cow.
Even if the just being able to speak on these things, right? It's an accomplishment
Yeah.
because you lived through enough to be able to have these conversations and
Yeah.
you speak from experience. That is value to that, right? So that's the thing, right? It's kind of like, how much can you expect somebody to pay for something if you yourself don't value it? If you don't communicate, or if you don't acknowledge the value of something about you, how much can you expect others to value it? If you wake up every single day and you're thinking, I have not done enough, I didn't reach far enough, I'm not where I need to be, why would anyone, or how would anyone be convinced that you are what you say that you are? And we do this to ourselves because it's like, I'm guilty of this myself. It's only years later I look back, I was like, wow, that was a great accomplishment. But in the moment, we never take the time to realize the value that we carry, right? So somehow we hope somebody else will see something that we're not willing to take the time to acknowledge ourselves. And we get frustrated that they don't see it, even though we ourselves are not taking the time to acknowledge and celebrate who we've become.
And the thing about this too is that it's nuanced. Like you said, man, there's so many different directions that we could take this into, right? Because it is very nuanced and it's multifaceted too, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we I'll go back to me. I'll use myself as an example. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm going back to the refilling your cup, because we're constantly pouring from that cup, and I'm like mindful of doing things that refill my cup, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's just how I roll. I'm also like really into my work, and I work super hard, and I'm very diligent about that. But I also refill my cup,
Yes.
and I thought I was doing a good job. I was like, I'm doing most of the things, maybe not all of the things, but I'm doing most of the things, because I recognize just how important it is to do that. However, it's like I had this experience that I haven't given myself in 4 years of just completely disconnecting and be present in the moment and enjoy it. And that's it. Those are my only responsibilities. Um, it wasn't until I gave myself that it like there was this new layer of clarity that opened up,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I mean by saying that it's nuanced and it's multifaceted. But there are layers
Mm-hmm.
to our awareness and to
Mm-hmm.
our ability to see
Yes.
different, very important aspects of ourselves and how we're operating inside of our lives.
Yes. Absolutely. Being successful is being able to turn yourself into an exceptional human being. If
Mm,
you manage to somehow, some way, turn yourself or become an exceptional human being, you're successful. You just have to choose whatever game it is that you want to play, right? So these things that we're working on, we call it business, we call it whatever, goals and aspirations or whatever. Ultimately, it's about the person that you're becoming in the process of trying to
mhm,
reach these goals. So if we don't take the time to acknowledge the power that we're gaining along the way by trying these things, the experiences, the knowledge, the patience, the this relentless pursuit of excellence toward ourselves. Because the hardest part, it's not that your business is not doing well enough. It's what you expect from yourself. Are you doing enough? Are you doing
mhm,
enough based on your own standards, based on your own expectations of yourself? So ultimately, this is really polishing who we are as individuals and turning ourselves into exceptional human beings. And
mhm.
exceptional human beings do exceptional things. You just have to choose whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And it is an iterative process about becoming that exceptional human being. Whatever definition of exceptional, I think, whatever definition of exceptional is to you. Um, you said something really important there, and maybe we talked about this a little bit in our last episode about the journey. You were talking about whatever you said made me realize that the person that you're becoming is what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Person that you're becoming. And I really do think that there is incredible value in, you said taking stock, and it is like having and I said it isn't until I'm reminded that I look at how far I've come, right? It's like we look at the goal.
Mm-hmm.
We're tempted to look at the goal. Society wants us to look at the goal. Our parents, maybe ourselves, the
Mm-hmm.
pressure that we put on ourselves has us looking at the goal, and like I'm always striving to get that. Um, and what we don't pay enough attention to, I'm guilty of this as well. What we don't pay enough attention to is the actual journey
Yes.
that we're on,
Yes.
and the evolution that that's happening to us as we go through that journey.
Yes. The evolution of you.
Oh, the evolution of you. Oh, yeah,
Yes. Because
because
that's,
we're constantly evolving, and we
yes.
don't give ourselves credit for that, because we don't often look at this process that's happening, and we don't often embrace the learning and the growth that's happening in each step that we take along this journey.
Let me ask you a question. How would an entrepreneur, not necessarily first time, right? You set out to build a business, you set out maybe to build a brand, you set out to make a difference. Okay. At what point does an entrepreneur or a business owner decide, I've been successful, I've done enough, I'm happy with myself? When or how does that happen?
Yeah. Well, I'll share my perspective. Something else that I encourage every one of my clients to do is to start with a vision of their life. Get clear on your vision. Your vision. And when I mean by vision, I'm talking about, yes, like what does that life look like? But
Mm-hmm.
most importantly, what does it feel like? And what do you look like and feel like when
Mm-hmm.
you envision this ideal life?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I always have people start there. And they always, when they go through that, more often than not, 9 times out of 10, they tell me, I don't, they're like, is that vision after they go through it all? And they're very detailed about everything. They
Mm-hmm.
go, is that enough though? Like, I don't need to have the mansion. I don't need to have, a garage with 20 cars in it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
need to be all of these things that they think that they should want, but they
Yes.
don't really want. What they want is just to feel in control of their life and to have time to spend with their family and with their friends and to indulge in their hobbies and to, like these things that are just taken for granted by so many of us and deprioritized on our list of priorities, right? They just want that. And they're like, the house doesn't have to be, it could just be a 2 or 3 bedroom house. I don't care. I just want to be comfortable. I want to feel comfortable inside of my own skin. I want to feel like I'm enough, and is that enough? Uh
Exactly.
it's so interesting. So anyway, I really feel like, to answer your question, starting with getting in touch with that vision of your life gives you something to now measure yourself, your life, your level of success, again, whatever your definition is of success
Mm-hmm.
is, you
Mm-hmm.
know, or whatever your definition of exceptional is. Because you get crystal clear about it when you are clear in your vision.
Mm-hmm.
And then either by your own accord or when somebody reminds you, you take stock in, well, what are the what do the different facets of my life look like right now, and how do
Mm-hmm.
they align with that? And you might be very surprised at just how much of it lines up perfectly with your
Yes.
vision. And when you do that and you're like, oh man, these things align, it's like, okay, well, what doesn't? Now let me take a look at that and see if there's some modifications that can happen there to
Mm-hmm.
further align. That's the long answer from my perspective to your question.
Yes, and I appreciate your answer. It kind of reminds me of have you read The Alchemist, the book? Okay. It's a small book. It was really famous. I think Oprah made it famous. Everybody read it a while ago. But it's an interesting book. I mean, it's not the most impactful book I've ever read, but it's an interesting book. Basically, the moral of the whole thing is that this young man set a goal for himself, right? And he had to like walk a long journey, travel places, saw different things, got himself in danger, and somehow, in the end, he realizes what he was looking for was right there at home the whole time, right? So that's the moral of the story. However, because he took that journey, he became an exceptional human being. Okay. So a lot of the things that people are pursuing in life ultimately come down to themselves and how they want to feel about themselves, right?
Yeah.
but we call it business. We call it making $1 million. We call it living in a mansion. All that
Yeah.
stuff. People just want to be happy, right? Whatever that means to you, it's
Yeah.
that simple. So most people start businesses thinking being their own boss will make them happier than they were working for somebody else.
Mhm.
Bottom line. Okay. The
Mhm.
10xing, the drive, the $50 million, the cars and all that stuff, that's just fluff.
Mhm.
Okay. People just want to be happy.
There's like there's a perceived feeling, I think, that's attached to those things, like the $1 million, the 20 cars, the mansion, the this and the that's. There's this perceived feeling that, well, like when I have that,
Mhm.
then I'll be happy because then I'll be able to all of these things.
Yes. I'll be recognized. I'll be respected, right? Maybe more people will want to be around me because I have so much to offer. Maybe I can afford my family this, that, and the other. So maybe they'll love me more because I can afford these things. So it all,
I'll be able to do whatever I want.
yes, I'll have the freedom to do whatever I want, right?
Mhm.
So basically, when we look at these business goals, right? We look at them as business goals. But there's no such thing as a business goal. Everything is a personal goal. Everybody is after something very personal, right? So we spend all these years putting these glasses on that we're after business goals and we're trying to make it and we're trying to, you know, 10x our businesses. If you can feel the way you feel without 10xing your business, you will not want to 10x your business. You'll be just
Mhm.
fine. The
Mhm.
reason why people keep pursuing whatever they're pursuing is because they're not feeling the way they're expecting to feel. So they figure if I chase this one more goal, I'll feel the way I want to feel. If I do this one more thing, or if my business reaches this level, then somehow I'll feel the way I want to feel. And ultimately, we forget why we started this whole journey in the first place.
And it's easy to forget.
Oh, yes.
It's really easy to forget because we default, I think one of the reasons why is because we default into old patterns, old habits. Those habits that we wanted to, that made us feel in such a way that we wanted to change, like get out of that, change that, and do
Mm-hmm.
something new, because now if it's new, then it's different and I'm not going to feel that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not careful, we will very easily
Mm-hmm.
default back to those patterns that made us feel that way
Yes.
and create a new cage for ourselves.
Yes. And this is why it's important to take the time to figure out what that cage is to
Yeah.
begin with on the personal level, right? You got to do that self-analysis. What are you after, right? There's like what's chasing you. Usually what we're chasing is what's chasing us. So what's chasing you? What are the monsters chasing you? Because the bigger the monster, the faster you run. So when you see somebody like super driven, want to do this, it's like, okay, what's chasing this person, right? Have you ever taken the time to find out why is it that you want this so badly? What is so bad about your life that you want to do this journey? Do you really want to know, understand exactly what it is that is bothering you about your life? Because if you don't know what it is that is actually bothering you in your life, and you get on this journey thinking the moment your business is gonna do 6 figures, you're gonna feel better, and then you have to push it to 7 figures, you're gonna feel better. Then that's how you keep going until you drop. And this happens all the time. They're very extremely successful entrepreneurs out there that can never take a minute to enjoy their lives. Then
Even
what's the point?
yeah, it's entrepreneurs and it's also people that aren't entrepreneurs, like my clients that come to me
Mm-hmm.
because they're at a career crossroads. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are corporate employees that just, they've been that they're just overwhelmed and they're done. They've fallen out of love with their career, even though they're proficient in it, they're doing great
Mm-hmm.
things, and they just get to a point where they're at a loss. They put so much responsibility on their shoulder, going after that next promotion, climbing the ladder, going to the next level, because that's what is supposed to happen, or that's what's going to give them more money, or that's what's going to give them a higher status or whatever. But then it comes with some things that don't feel good
Exactly.
sometimes, you know, and then it becomes really hard to deal with. So I think just back to the whole point is that we really don't talk enough about giving ourselves the opportunity to assess ourselves, to check in with ourselves, to listen to what our body is telling us, to listen
Yes.
to our gut, to notice
Yes.
how we're feeling about things, and to ask ourselves, what do I really want? And sometimes we know that, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we can figure that out by just disconnecting for 10 days and going on a cross country road trip, or going through, traveling through Europe for a few months like you're doing. you know
Exactly. Yeah.
you know sometimes it's that, sometimes it's just talking to somebody to get it out of your own head, get it out on the table so that you can look at it and see what you're dealing with.
Exactly. Because to me, like all this work that I've been doing, right? When I finally published my book, it changed my life because I felt like I was being a hypocrite. Like the day the book was published, I was not living what was said in the book, even though I had this knowledge to share. I went straight to work, tried to promote the book, tried to grind it out and push it and doing what I've always done, right? Then one day it hit me as like, this is a different economy. This is a different energy. I cannot have the same approach that I've had with all of my business ventures in the past with this kind of work, because the whole point of this whole self-analysis thing is that you need to understand ultimately what you're running for, right? Because if you don't, you spend your whole life running and you will never stop. You'll never get that satisfaction that you're looking for. Because let's say what it is that you need is in Dubai, right? You spend your whole life running toward Paris because everybody's going to Paris.
Mm-hmm.
So you will run, and you may actually get to Paris, but then you hate it because that's not where you want it to be. Where you want it to be is somewhere completely different. But you never took the time to look at the map and say, okay, I'm going this way, then I should start going in this direction. And I should pace myself because this is going to be a long road. And then along the way, I should gather these things that will allow me to get there. And, we don't do the self-analysis. We don't take the time to realize who we are as people and what we're after individually. This is an individual journey. Okay. We live in a society where information is shared at such a pace that we cannot make the distinction. What's for me, what's for the other person, what's for those people, and what's for, the kind of life that I'm living. We're all living in different worlds. Okay. We live in our own energy field. We live in different worlds. Whatever somebody's doing with their life, with their business, even though they can talk about it loudly on social media, whatever, if that's not your path, that's not your path. You have to find your own path, right? So if we don't take the time, because I believe it's worth it, just like I said earlier, there's no such thing as business goals. all the stuff that the goals that you give yourself at the beginning of the year or whatever, these are all personal goals. Somehow you feel like this amount of money will make my life a little more comfortable, right? Maybe I don't like this house that I live in, and this amount of money will allow me to buy a house that has the things that I want that my family can enjoy. So these are all personal goals. So ultimately, you're somewhere and you want to be a little bit happier, or maybe a lot happier. That's it. Right? Whatever dose of happiness you have today, well, let me get a little bit more of it. That's pretty much it. So figure out what makes you happy or what will make you happy and go after that instead of spending 20, 30 years trying to set business goals that even when you reach them, they don't even feel the way you expect them to feel.
Mhm.
So to me, that's really something that does not get talked about enough.
Mhm.
It's always about the person. It's always about our personal needs. Whatever it is, some people believe if they're more successful financially, it will help them find a life partner that will love them.
Mhm.
So they go ahead and work as hard as they can to make themselves as appealing as they can. So this image of a successful entrepreneur, is that really what they're after? No, they just want a great companion in life. Maybe you should work on that instead of trying to rule the world with your whatever business solutions you're offering. You see what I'm saying? We miss it.
Mhm.
And it's okay to admit that I want to be happier. I want to give myself an opportunity to feel better about myself. Then you have to get to the bottom of what's preventing you to feel good about yourself, right? So that's a whole nother subject. But my point is, it's always personal. There's an old guy. Remember the old guys that used to do business deals on the golf course? Like that generation is almost gone. Those guys that would make like six figures just going, playing golf and signing deals on a golf course. Okay. One of those old men I had the opportunity to work with a few years before his retirement, and he told me, because at the time it was like the beginning stages of the whole digital marketing, and then they're like, oh, this is B2B versus B2C. This is how you approach it, blah, blah. And he's just laughs and he's like, there's no such thing as B2B. There's no such thing as B2B. There's no such thing as B2C. Every business is a people business.
Mhm.
It's people to people, always. If you want to talk to IBM, there's got to be that one person at IBM that you have to talk to. And you
It's
have
a
to
human
appeal.
being.
These are all human beings. Corporations don't make decisions. It's always that one person. And sure enough, that one person happens to like to play golf. That one person happens to have a son that plays soccer or a daughter that swims, right? And that's how people did business back in those days. I don't know if people are still kind of going about business the same way, but and that stuck with me. There's no such thing as B to anything. Every business is a people business. If you want to be successful at business, get good at knowing and understanding people. Period. Right? So everything we do, it's about us. There's no shame in it. We just want to be a little happier. That's all. It's okay to admit that and at least get to the bottom of what would make you happier
Mhm.
and start there. Start putting your coins in that little basket
Yeah.
instead of let me build a multi-million dollar business. Maybe that's what, that's really what's going to do it for you. But before you take that journey, get to the bottom of what exactly will make you happier than you are today.
And I think that's a good place. That's a good food for thought moment for us to leave our listeners with on this episode. What exactly is it that would make you
Yes.
happy?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and one step further, bonus question. what is already happening in your life that aligns with that, your answer to what would make you happy? Because
Exactly.
I'm willing to bet that there are a lot of
Exactly.
things already happening in your life
Exactly.
that align with your answer of what would make you happy. It just may look a little bit different than, what that picture is in your mind, but if you look at what these things are, a lot of them are already happening. We just take them for granted, or we take them for granted. It's like, okay, that's already happening. That's good. So now let me focus on the problem. What's missing. And that,
Yes.
when we focus on that, that becomes the only thing that we see. And that's
Exactly.
how I think how we get in that grind. So give yourself the chance to hit that pause button and ask yourself, what would make me happy? And get detailed about that.
Exactly. Let me give a quick example on that. You know, when you're going grocery shopping, right? A lot of people, and this is why they tell you not to go grocery shopping when you're hungry.
Yeah.
Because if you just leave the house because you're hungry, right? You go and you fill up your cart with whatever you can, right?
Oh, everything. So inspired. Oh, yes, I can do all this stuff with this cream cheese. And
Yes.
yes, all the things.
Then you
Mhm.
get home, then you realize you already have a jar of that pickle. You already have you already have like 3 boxes of whatever macaroni that you just bought. You already have that cheese that you have not used. And especially in America, people end up throwing away a lot of food. Why? Because before they go grocery shopping, they don't open the fridge and see, make an inventory of what they already have. So they don't go to the store and buy more of the same thing when you already have most of what you need in the fridge. Okay. This is just a simple example. We don't take the time to value what we already have. We always look ahead and tell ourselves there's something out there that we don't have, and it's more important than everything else that you've been able to accomplish so far in life. And that's not healthy. Okay. So let's just start there, right? Make an inventory of what you have in your life right now that is valuable to you and leverage it. Because ultimately, that's all it is, right? You have to be able to leverage something. Take stock of what you have right now and leverage it and see how far you'll go, instead of trying to start this whole new journey and conquer the world. And it sounds so wonderful. It's just, it's not sustainable. And if there's an easier or simpler way to get to where we need to be, as long as we know where it is that we need to be, then I think we'll have a much more pleasant life experience altogether. So I guess that's my message. Life is hard, but it doesn't have to be that hard. We can make it a little more pleasant for ourselves and still manage to accomplish everything we set out to do, as long as we know why we're doing it.
So much wisdom in that.
So I guess that's all I have for today.
And that does it. That does it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here with us. Thanks for hanging through these super candid and unscripted conversations. We don't really know where the conversation is going to go. At the
Absolutely.
beginning, it ends up going exactly where it needs to. So I hope that you found this
Exactly.
valuable. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.